Unprocessed transactions can be investigated using the special filters found in the second filter of the movements form. Before we do this though, it's best practice to ensure all supplier bills have been imported and all export batches sent. We can choose to see all unprocessed transfers, including current records, in the one list, but for the purpose of this video, we will deal with the transfer off movements separately. Here we can see that many of the records listed have not been ticked for export. As the default setting within 2IC pallets is to export all transfer off movements, we can assume that the export box has been accidentally unchecked by one of our users. For those records dated within the supplier's processing cutoff period, we simply need to tick the export box so they are included in our next batch. For those outside the supplier's cutoff period, we will need to send the trading partner a backdated transfer request authority email. We do this by clicking on Request BDT at the bottom of the screen and following the prompts to send the automatically generated email. For our records, the time and date is recorded. We can see that 3 transfer off movements were exported to the supplier but remain unprocessed. If there are other transfer off movements from this batch that are processed, then we can assume that the supplier has not processed these 3 due to incorrect details. We should check our emails for any notifications or contact the supplier directly to determine what the problem was and rectify it. For the purpose of this video though, we'll assume that these 3 were the only records included in the batch and that the entire batch remains unprocessed. We will send the records in the next batch by clearing the existing batch date and re-ticking for export. Alternatively, we could re-export the original batch from the export data form. SHEP will not process the same docket number twice, and so 2IC pallets will warn a user at the time of exporting a batch if a duplicate exists and unassign the problem records from the batch. If this warning is ignored and the duplicate not investigated, the genuine transfer will remain unexported and therefore unprocessed, as is the case with the transfer of these 85 pallets. For duplicates still within the supplier's processing cutoff period, we would simply find these in the movements form using the unprocessed duplicate docket numbers special filter and, assuming they relate to the same physical movement of equipment, cancel one of them. The other will now be sent to the supplier for processing in the next export batch. Here we can also see an example of a non-genuine unprocessed transfer on movement. We can see that the billed movement has simply been accepted at the time of reconciling the invoice instead of matching it with the existing keyed record. The record without the bill date should be cancelled and it is then removed from the list of unprocessed transfers.